Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed.
What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Jay Immanuel. We are back with a new episode of Why We Succeed. And today I'm joined by a very, very special guest, the one and only Josh Cousins. What's going on, Josh?
Jay, thank you so much, man, for having me on board. Really, really appreciate it. And been looking forward to this one, man. Been looking forward to it.
Oh, man, you're not the only one. Josh, I gotta lie. I can't lie, I should say. Man, I've been on Twitter. Your threads are absolutely amazing. You know, like, I came across a YouTube video of the interview that you were doing talking about your entrepreneurial journey. And I was like, yo, I got to check more about Josh out. I went to your Twitter thread and man, you just dropped so many gems and you're truly an inspiration for me, you know, because I'm new on this Twitter journey and I'm like, man, like if there's anybody I'm trying to, you know, kind of emulate in this space, like it's you, man. And I just want to say thank you for being an inspiration to so many of us out there who are, you know, not just trying to grow on Twitter, but start profitable businesses as well.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, like Twitter's been amazing. Twitter's been amazing. I've been on Twitter now since April. Like as a platform, it's great. Like just growing your brand and your business, but the people you get to connect with, like that's like the core of it all. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started on Twitter because it's just such an amazing platform. But yeah, man, really appreciate the kind words.
Of course, of course. So one of the questions I always like to start off with my guests is, how do you define success? What's your definition of it?
That's a really good question. So I feel like, you know, in the business space and people building businesses and selling products and services, we often correlate success to the amount of money we make. I've fallen victim to that. And don't get me wrong, like building businesses and making money, it builds your character faster than literally anything out there, for sure. I'm sure you've noticed that.
Yes.
The problem is, though, is people tend to forget to live a life outside of business. And I've had times where, you know, you pull in like really good numbers with your business and like everything is great, but you know, you're growing one side of your character, but there's just like a whole other side. Like there's countries to visit, there's cultures to go and see and discover, that there's people to go and meet, right? There's just I don't know, I've had this epiphany and I feel like success for me really does come down, obviously part financial, you know, like, and status and building up a business and having respect by your peers, you know, by your business partners and your audience and so on and so forth. But also like outside of a business, you know, my family, my friends, you're traveling the world. Like that's really what for me is success. How much fun you're having,
Right.
And in 20 years time, can you look back and you said you had a damn good time, right? And not necessarily just business, right? So that for me is success, true success.
I love that. And that kind of brings it to mind. When would that shift happen for you? Because it seems like there was some shift where you were like, hold on, I like the financial stuff, but there's more to it. Was there some type of catalyst or event that kind of set you off in a different path?
Yeah. So like in terms of like the success side of things and making money and building a business, that started off when I was, you know, 16, 15, 17, wanted to make money. You had a job, you're like Joe Schmo, you go into a job, you're working, you know, all of this sort of stuff, right? And you're like, I don't want to do this. A typical up and coming journey. But when it comes to like, there's a little bit more than just making money. Man, it must have happened. When was it? Like a year ago. So a year and a half ago, my mum, she had a stroke, and
wow. Sorry to hear that.
it's an unfortunate situation. And the thing is, she was like a raging alcoholic for a very long time. Me and my brother, we grew up, you know, single mother and so on and so forth. And she drank a lot. And the thing that really got me wasn't, obviously there's the fact that my mum had a stroke. It sucks, but it was the fact that my little brother, here's the crazy thing, right? So she had a stroke, and my brother rang me up 3-4 days later, and he rings me up and he says, Josh, like mum's being really, really weird. I have no idea what's going on. And like I've been through it time and time again. And I was like, Ben, she's off her head, off of wine. Like she's drank too much wine. And my girlfriend turns around to me and says, like, that doesn't sound normal. You should call an ambulance. So the ambulance come, they pick my mum up, they do like a CT scan from head to toe, and realize she had a stroke 3 days ago. And if they wouldn't have picked her up when they did, she wouldn't have been here with us. But the thing that hurt me the most, man, was the fact that my little brother, you know, without a father, without anyone looking after him, had to go through that. Then I just realized, like, dude, like, you know, I can't sit here for 10, 12 hours a day
Right.
build my business. Who knows? I could last 5-10 years until you reach the goal you want to reach.
Hmm.
And that's like the epiphany that I had to like, no way. I
Yeah.
gotta take a step back from business. Gotta
Hmm.
look after my bro. Go spend some
Yes.
time with him. Because one day we're not gonna be here anymore, man. So
Right.
gotta really take care of the people around us, and
Hmm.
experience that good stuff. So that was the big thing for me, man, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And it's tough, when sometimes life kind of hits us, right? Where it's not just like we kind of wake up and have like an epiphany moment, but it's more so like the reality of life itself is what kind of jolts us or shocks us back to, hold on, maybe the path that I'm on, I need to, make some adjustments to it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's a good point, because at the end of the day, we're all gonna go through hardships.
Hmm.
Like, life isn't linear. Like,
Hmm.
it's not just a constant journey of going up. There's like those downs in between, but it's because it's not necessarily that the situations that differ for myself or yourself. Like, we're gonna
Hmm.
have these situations where you lose a loved one, lose your job, your business goes bankrupt, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
It's how you react to those situations, and can you pull away certain lessons from those situations and grow from those situations. That's like the most important part of it all,
Yeah.
for sure.
Now, I gotta ask you a question that's come up with a few of the guests that I've had on the show, and it's the conversation around balance, right? I have some
Yeah.
entrepreneurs that say, "Hey, like you do have to find a balance," and then I've had some that come on the show like, "There's no such thing as balance." So, Joshua, like, where do you stand on that? Do you feel like there's a balance between pursuing work and also balancing it with the fun and the family aspect, or is there no balance at all, and you just kind of make both of those things work independently of one another?
Such a good question. And man, I agree on both sides. I've
Hmm.
heard sides, and both are very well articulated. You hear the side of people like balance is a real thing, people who are like a family man who has kids and a wife,
Hmm.
um, and he's like 100% set on balance. Then you have the other side. It could also be a family man, and he's like, about balance isn't a real thing. For me personally, because I do reckon it's a very like a personally opinionated thought.
Hmm.
But for me, like, balance is a tricky one. I don't really believe in balance that much, because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, life is very unbalanced. It's a very
Yeah.
unbalanced thing, right? You spend 1/3 of your life sleeping in bed,
Yes.
just sleeping, doing nothing, right?
Right.
The second third, for most people, it's spent being at a job.
Yeah.
And then you've got the last third.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily spent having a good time. You got to brush your teeth. You got to do the dishes. You got to do the
Right.
groceries. Stuff is very mundane. And
Hmm.
then you only really have such a small percentage, like with your loved ones, with your kids. So for
Yeah.
me, I would rather have, like, in certain periods of my life, like right now, this is the period that I'm in for the next
Hmm.
6 months. It's kind of going monk mode, where I have certain projects that I want to get done. I'm super clear
Hmm.
on it. I'm just going to grind it.
Yeah.
And what that's going to do, hopefully, after these 6 months, I'm set up in a good
Hmm.
position. So then I can spend the 6 months after that, not working, 8, 9, 10 hours a day,
Right.
just enjoying my life, working 2, 3 hours a day. Right. So
Yes.
that's my balance, man. It's a constant
Mm.
journey of being unbalanced to be balanced in other areas of life.
Right.
Does it make
It
sense, man?
Yeah, it's almost, and let me correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like you use certain periods of your life to prepare you for the future. So it's like, okay, I'm gonna carve out, in your case, like this 6 months, and I'm gonna go in on work for this 6 months, but it's so that a year from now, 2 years from now, I don't have to be working 8, 9 hour days every day. And I can spend more time and allocate it to family, to fun. And it's all because I carved out that time, during that period to like pour into that one thing, in this case, work.
Absolutely, absolutely, because you are setting yourself up for the future, and that could
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily have to be business. It
Mhm.
could also be taking the time out a day to work on your relationship with your spouse, with your kids. Like your kids, if you have a kid,
Mhm.
and your kid's growing up, like just like instilling certain beliefs, certain disciplines in your kid's life, and maybe you have to take some time out of your work and business, and maybe your business takes a hit.
Yeah.
But it's something where it has to be unbalanced. But you got to figure out what is deeply important to you, and
Right.
that's the thing. Like, this leads me on to like one
Mhm.
thing that's really important. Like, us business owners, and when you run a business, what's worked for me doesn't necessarily work for the person listening or watching this,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's important that you go through life and that you see life as just various different lessons that have worked for other people, and your job is
Mhm.
to be a sponge, right? Suck
Right.
up the information, keep the stuff, retain the stuff that is working for you, and just squeeze
Mhm.
out anything that doesn't work for you. I genuinely see a lot of, like, the majority of what I do exactly that way. Just because,
Mm.
like, man, I've tried like I've paid ridiculous amounts of money for coaching programs and courses just to find out in the end, like, oh damn, dude, I don't want to do webinars. I don't want to do Facebook ads.
Mm.
I don't want to be an info product man doing ads on Facebook, right? But some people
Mhm.
do,
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure.
Hey, and that brings up something else that I think is important along the journey of an entrepreneur, which is determining the things that you don't want to do. I feel like that's almost as important as identifying the thing that you do want to go all in on. And I'm curious for you, what did that process look like when you were like, hey, these things that you just listed, like Facebook ads, webinars, like I don't want to do that. How did you determine that that just wasn't your lane?
Yeah, that's such a good point, man. That's a really good point. I love this topic so much. And I'm sure you were the same. I'm sure a lot of people are the same. When you start your
Mhm.
business, like you want to make money, right?
Right.
You want to make 20 grand a month, 30 grand a month.
Mhm.
At one point, when I got started online, there was like this small subgroup of people, right,
Mm.
around my age. We started on Instagram,
Mhm.
kind of like a high school clique, right? But it
Right.
was on social media, and some of them went on to make 100 grand a month, just insane.
Wow.
And they've done it, and fair play to them. And
Mhm.
the problem is, right, and I'm not saying that you can't make 100 grand a month,
Mhm.
um, and have to work 12 hours a day. There are some people who make 100 grand a month and work 2 hours a day.
Mm.
But for me, the biggest thing when it comes to that is like what I want and what I don't want is,
Mm.
for me, I want to live a life that is very low upkeep, low stress.
Right.
And I'm a very introverted person, so I have a really hard, and I have a business partner, right?
Mhm.
And my business partner is amazing with people and training people and talking to people. I'm not. I like we've hired people on board on in the company. I have a
Mhm.
very hard time sitting down and training people. I just do.
Mm.
It's a lot of
Mhm.
stress on my shoulders. So I've
Right.
understood right now at this point in my life, this could
Mhm.
change in 5 years, but right now, that's not what I want. That's not what I want to pursue.
Right.
And I just got to be honest with myself. I don't let outside forces pressure me, man. Like
Mhm.
you might go on Instagram and you might see other people living a certain life, and you might feel pressure to do certain things.
Mhm.
I just 100% just try to listen to my inner voice as much as I can, and sometimes you can be influenced by outside forces and make silly
Right.
decisions based on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's where it comes from for me, man.
Nah, I can totally relate, and you're so right. I know for a fact that I have to limit my exposure to some things because sometimes you can see stuff at the wrong time, and it can kind of take you off course, or like you mentioned, it can, which is I think possibly the worst thing, is impact that inner peace that you have. And
Mm,
that's the thing that I try to look for, is like, is this starting to have an impact on my inner peace? And if it is, like, okay, I need to mute, I need to shut down, I need to, like, detach myself from whatever is, starting to stir up, my stress levels. So yeah, I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
dude, yeah, I love that. That's a really good observation because it requires a lot of self awareness, and it's so underrated. But if you can just be self aware, because at the end of the day, like what's the goal of life? The goal of
Right.
life is to be happy. You
Mhm.
can't bring all the money and the businesses to your grave. You can't. And
Right.
people talk about, but my kids will have it. Well, it's kind of like within 2-3 generations that wealth is dissipated, and it's
Right.
not here anymore.
Mhm.
So yeah, man, like self awareness is a really good point. But yeah, for sure.
Oh, man. So actually, I kinda wanna go back a little bit. You talked about your upbringing. I'm
Yeah.
curious, did you have anybody that you saw growing up that was an entrepreneur that kinda made you be like, "Ooh, I wanna do that?" Or how did you get introduced to entrepreneurship?
Mm, I didn't have anyone that I looked up to. So I grew up in a village in France, in
Okay.
in the middle of nowhere. So the nearest grocery store was 30 minutes away by car.
Wow.
The village had uh, like 6 houses in there, and all of
Mhm.
them were farmers and hunters.
Mm.
So I didn't really have anyone I could look up to. I don't know,
Mhm.
man. It's weird. It, when I got into high school, I met a guy.
Mhm.
He does well. He's in the UK and he has like a few different companies,
Mhm.
physical companies. So it's the complete opposite of what I do.
Okay.
And we got introduced to each other. And we started talking about business. And I
Mm.
think when I look back at it, I think that's where it started. He was much
Okay.
more business driven than me, but we talked
Mhm.
about business a lot. Like
Okay.
at one point, we wanted to start trading when we were like
Mm.
13.
Wow.
set up trading accounts and stuff.
Mhm.
So that's where it started. And you know it, man, right? When you get into
Mhm.
business and into a certain way of thinking, and it's
Mhm.
just beneficial overall for your life, you can't get
Yes.
out of it. You
Right.
just go deeper into the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And that's how it started for me.
Oh,
Just
man.
one connection.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what introduced you to the world of online business, right? Because you mentioned your friend, he went more so like the physical business side, and you took the route of online business. What was that first introduction to, oh man, like I can actually make a living online?
Yeah, so for me, it was back in 2015, 2016.
Okay.
So I had got a job at my uncle's place. So
Okay.
luckily, he had a pretty big company in the UK, and he was kind enough to give me an opportunity to work for him.
Mhm.
And I love his philosophy of approaching it. So he didn't just give me like a $2,000 paycheck every month. It was bare minimum. I had to pay half of it towards my rent. So like
Mhm.
right off the bat, I just knew what my outgoings were, how much I was making, just the harsh realities of the world.
Right.
Um, and then did that for a couple months, and it was great because you're 16, you make $1,000 in a
Mhm.
month, you feel on top of the world.
Right.
Then, man, I don't know, dude. Like I must have seen an ad. I remember going back on vacation in France to see
Mhm.
some of my friends and stay at my mom's place, and there was like a webinar. I don't know who the guy was, Neil Patel, like someone with like
Mhm.
SEO or something like that. And
Uh-huh.
I watched it, and from there on, I was just hooked. And then right after that, that's when I got onto Instagram. And then
Wow.
like, man, it sounds like such a typical backstory of so many people, Instagram and stuff, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, that's how it started for me. Then I slowly seeped into Instagram, did that for a couple years,
Mhm.
uh, and yeah, then from there it just kind of transformed itself. And we can
Right.
talk more about that if you'd like, for
Yeah.
sure.
The one thing that I'm interested in, because I know you had mentioned that you've also been able to get success on Facebook, right?
Yes,
And even though Facebook ads is something that you're like, I'm not necessarily doing, it looks like you went more the route of like Facebook groups. Is that accurate?
yes, accurate. Yeah,
Okay. So
Facebook
what
group.
did that look like, and how did that kind of tie into like the overall part of your business?
So I started on. So what had happened is I was doing Instagram for a couple years.
Hmm.
I had got connected with a guy in an agency, and like a big part of building a business is just being connected with the right people because they
Right.
can introduce you to opportunities and so on and so forth. Got hooked up with him. Whilst I was working a job, I was able to make some extra money, like $500 a month on the side.
Hmm.
So I was just saving every single penny I was making. So quit my job, went back to France to
Hmm.
live with my mother to
Okay.
save on rent.
Okay.
That was the plan. So the plan was go back to France and start a drop shipping company.
Okay.
With Facebook ads and Shopify, ended up just spending all my money within 6 months,
Hmm.
was basically broke.
Hmm.
Um, then that's when I discovered affiliate marketing on Facebook. So what I did back then was, and at the end of the day, this is the thing, right? It doesn't
Hmm.
matter what platform you're on, whether it's
Hmm.
TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, just doesn't matter. They all work.
Hmm.
It's just how you're approaching it and how are you willing to sit there and just try every single angle possible to see what
Hmm.
is going to work in terms of content. And I
Right.
just sat there on my Facebook profile, on my personal profile, and I just started posting, platitudes, thoughts,
Mhm.
ideas, perspectives, got some attention and
Mhm.
started making some money. And that's how my journey started on Facebook. It
Wow.
was more out of pure and sheer desperation because if not, it
Mm.
was just going back to a job. And I was not
Right.
going back to a job. It was that back then it was the thing that motivated me. It just
Yeah.
terrified me, the thought of going back to a job.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's how it
Nah,
started.
yeah, I can totally relate, man. It's like you've kind of put your back up against the wall and like, I'm gonna make this work. And that's all. That's it. I'm just gonna make this work. Like there is no other option. Like I'm going to make it work. And I love that. And I think that that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily do. Like we all know that you're going to experience challenges. You're going to experience, obstacles and bumps along the road. And I guess that's the question that I'll ask you. Despite some of the bumps along the road, some of the obstacles, what's allowed you to continue to persevere?
Hmm. I would say a massive part is just is discipline. So
Hmm.
there's two sides of it. There's leverage. So when you build a business, when you start learning a skill,
Hmm.
like if you're brand new to online businesses, you need 6 months of exposure minimum just to see the bare minimum results, and that's not even guaranteeing that you're going to be able to make enough money from your business to substitute your job.
Right.
So there's that side of things where the more time and the more effort you put into something, the more leverage you're going to have down the line. And what happens is, let's just take Twitter, for example.
Yes.
You do Twitter for 12 months. You do everything you possibly can to figure out Twitter growth and building an audience, and moving them from like I'm familiar with Jay to I trust Jay and his expertise and how he can help me. Now you have leverage, and now you have an audience. So you've put all the work in prior to that point. And now once you have this point of leverage, it's pretty much impossible to screw it up unless you just do something to tarnish your brand.
Right.
Now on the split side, you have things like discipline and just this internal hunger to go out there and just conquer things.
Right.
Now there's discipline, right? Which discipline at the end of the day, like motivation gets you going, discipline keeps you going, that sort of stuff, right? It's just the lifeblood of success. Just being able to sit at your computer, being like, man, I don't want to do this stuff. Like half of the things that I do online, I don't want to do anyway. But you just do it anyway, right? Because you know it's set you up for the future. There's a million things when it comes to this, man. So there's the discipline side of things. That's my thought. What was I going to say? Damn, dude. that was
it'll
a good
come back. Yo, it'll always come back. So no pressure.
For sure.
But now, like you make a good point with regards to like the discipline piece, because I think that some people, like, they feel like if it's something that they don't want to do, then it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just not gonna do it. Like maybe that means that I need to shift or pivot. And I think that kind of plays a part with that perseverance, right? Is recognizing that the things that you don't want to do, those are also obstacles. It's not a sign to say, stop, this isn't the right thing. It's just, hey, you just got to learn how to push past these things, even if it's just like we talked about earlier, for a period of time. Like, is this thing that I don't like doing going to set me up in the future? Is it something that I'm always going to have to do that I don't like doing? Or is it something that I'm temporarily going to not like doing, but I have to do if I want to be set up in the future?
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that. It's such a good way of seeing it. And as well, you can kind of compare it to if you start a business and you're seeing thousands of people succeeding with that business, why would you give up? Why? Like they've just put in more grit, more sweat, more work than you have. Like period. Like obviously there's part luck, there's part you're in the right place at the right time to close this client that could potentially save your business. It's happened to me before. But obviously the harder you work, kind of like the luckier you get, right? The more opportunities land in front of you. But on top of that as well, because I have my foot back, you were right. It does come back to you.
I knew it.
So it was, you have the discipline side of things. Then you also have the deep internal rooted issues that can cause certain personality traits that are very negative.
Right.
So, if someone grew up in a white picket fence neighborhood and you had a good father, you had a good mother, they disciplined you, kind of like Hormozy. Dude, like his dad obviously instilled a ton of work ethic into this man, and look how it's turned out. Just absolutely amazing.
Right.
The problem is though, is let's just say you pop into the world and you end up on the lower echelon of society, right? Lower middle class, maybe even lower class. Then you're probably going to start picking up certain character traits that aren't to your benefit, right? And this happened to me a lot. Self-esteem was a massive one for me. I didn't have self-esteem until a couple years of really just working on that stuff. And I just realized now that I have a business and I still have my personal issues, with my mother and just things that happen in my life, just like it does to everyone.
Right.
You have to figure this stuff out. You have to figure this stuff out before you figure out the next tactic and strategy and platform to go post on. Because let's just say you're in a toxic relationship and this relationship, or there's just there's unanswered questions, that there's something weird in the air. If you're not figuring this stuff out, how do you expect to outperform other people that have figured that stuff out, that have a very clear written path in terms of their personal life? They are disciplined. They go to the gym. They eat healthy. So that's equally a big part as building out the building blocks of your business. It's something that's overlooked because this is like the beginning stages of a business. Like it's really rare that someone can build $1 million business, even a 6-figure business, whilst being mentally screwed up, right? Because of their personal issues. So it's overlooked by many people, which is unfortunate. But anyone who knows anyone who's been through any tough times and they've gotten out on the other side, they know how important it is, for
Yeah.
sure.
And you make a great point, and it's something that I had to realize as well, is that sometimes, and I'll just speak for myself personally, is that I had to recognize that I was standing in my own way. There were things that I wanted to accomplish, and I felt that, oh, if I put enough effort in, if I put enough work in, then it'll produce that result. And it wasn't until I started to recognize, like, hold on, there are things internally that are actually hindering me from getting to that place that I want to be. How can I expect myself to be disciplined when it comes to business if I'm not even disciplined when it comes to my appetite, as an example? And I was just like, for a long time, I didn't see the connection between those two. I thought, okay, well, business discipline is totally different from, appetite discipline. But like, no, they're all connected. And it's like, if you're failing on one end, then there's likely going to be, at the very least, fractures on the other end. It may not completely break, because let's be honest, we know that there are people who are very successful in their business, but then you look at their personal life and it's very fractured. So, in the flip side, where people are, very successful in their personal life to a certain extent, but then when you look at the business time, it's like, man, they can't seem to catch a break. None of the opportunities that they try to pursue work out. And you're wondering why. Well, typically there's somewhere on either one of those sides or both of them where there's a fracture. There's something that needs to be addressed. And I'll admit, Josh, like, it took me a while to figure out, like, oh man, I actually have to fix some things within myself before I can, allow some of these opportunities to really blossom when it comes to my business.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the way you've just put that on a platter, it just goes to show that it goes deeper than just saying figure your personal stuff out, figure the business stuff out. Like, because this is the part of the business where you can listen to a podcast, you can take certain things away from it, but it is your job to go out there and figure these things out. And some people have it harder than others.
Right.
Like that's the thing with life. It just
Yeah.
sucks, because some
Yeah.
people can have it easier than others. Some people can have it harder than others. Period. And it's just your job. The thing is, if you're given the crap cards of life, you can
Mhm.
get on the other side. Like you have character. You have a
Mhm.
lot of character, far more character than most people who are handed the golden ticket to business and so on and so forth. But that's a
Mhm.
really good point, because again, these answers, they can sometimes take a lifetime to figure out.
Right.
And yeah, so yeah, it's just a journey of just discovery, I would say.
It is. It is, man. And like I said, it took me a while to recognize
Mm.
how connected our internal personal journey is to what we're trying to accomplish when it comes to our business. And once you can see the link between those two, man, I feel like it opens you up to be able to go to places that you never imagined that you could, or
Yeah.
at least that's what I experienced.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So another thing that I wanted to go back to, I know on your Twitter profile you talk about having accomplished, hitting that 1 million mark organically selling. So I want to kind of dive into that concept a little bit of what is organic selling. Maybe there's some people out there who aren't familiar with it. They heard about sales, but like, what exactly does it mean to sell something organically?
Yeah, selling something organically is simply going onto a social media platform and just leveraging the algorithm, leveraging an audience without having to do any output. The only output is your effort. There's no monetary output. There's no paying for retweets, for example.
Hmm.
You could put that in the organic category at some sort of level, but no paid ads, no paid ads. So it's just simply
Hmm.
going onto a platform and just getting your voice out there, getting your ideas out there, your thoughts and your perspectives, and
Hmm.
building an audience off of the back of that platform, and then just distributing your services completely organically. So in that perspective,
Hmm.
um, the the margins can be extremely high,
Yeah.
like 90%, pretty much. But that's what organic selling is, and,
Okay.
and I've done that forever.
And that's amazing. And I want to dive a little bit into that because you talked about one of the benefits being the margins, and in business, that's a huge part of it, those profit margins. What would you say are some other benefits when it comes to approaching selling from an organic perspective as opposed to, kind of paying to play?
For most people, you're learning the fundamentals of marketing. You're learning the fundamentals of your offer, of your brand, of your voice. People go into
Hmm.
paid marketing, but it doesn't make sense. Like the amount of people who have phone calls with and just DMing back and forth, and they're like, I'm going to do paid ads. I'm like, how much money have you made? I've made $0. Well, it's ridiculous. Like
Right.
you first want to use organic traffic to validate your offer. Just get validation. That's the key thing, because if not, you are flushing money down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
If you have, maybe you work in corporate, maybe you inherited some money and you have a lot of money to disperse into paid ads, go for it, because you will get a ton of data back. But obviously, don't do it blindly. I just think organic marketing for 95% of people just makes sense, because you're going to be building up so many valuable traits and characters when it comes to building out a business, your marketing, all of that sort of good stuff, way more than just jumping into paid ads. And the thing is, if you have one offer and you can bring this offer to multi 6 figures a year, like in volume organically, if you run ads to that, it will probably do well at some sort of capacity.
Great point. And with that in mind, for people out there that's like, yo, I want to build on a foundation that is based on, organic traffic and selling organically, what would you say are maybe one or two things that is required to do that?
Choose a platform, first of all. Now, when it comes to choosing a platform, there's going to be written and there's going to be video.
Right.
In terms of video, it's a difficult one. Right. And this is solely my opinion, but video, a lot of people should not be on video. They shouldn't have podcasts or anything. Like you are very well articulated. That's a perfect trait to interview people and have podcasts. If you're not a well articulated individual, it's kind of hard. You can keep going. I mean, if you look at people like Mr. Beast and like all of these YouTube success stories, I mean, you look at their videos, they used to suck, right? But like to have that persistence, that's amazing. I believe that the like written, for example, like what I do and what I've done for years now, it just makes the most sense. Copyrights and just makes the most sense for a lot of people. It's the barrier to entry is very, very low. There's no overthinking. There's no looking at my setup or anything like that. It's strictly going onto a social media platform and just writing. And that, I mean, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn are amazing for that. The other part, like the second thing, when it comes to building a business organically, man, I would say, I mean, there's a couple things, but I would say you apart from the consistency and the persistence, it's going to be originality. So authenticity and bringing authenticity into your brand, because at the end of the day, like you can kind of see like business in general, because businesses, online businesses, any online businesses, the barrier to entry is extremely low, which means it's extremely saturated at the bottom. The further you go up at the top, the lower the saturation levels are, right? Which is why you have 20% of the people at the top making 80% of the money, and 80% of the people at the bottom making 20% of the money. Right. And that's where your skill set comes into play, your personality, doing things outside of business, or if you're solely doing business, making sure you're crushing it, bringing your thoughts and ideas and perspectives and not being afraid to share them. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's what builds this unique relationship with your audience. And some of these people can become lifelong friends. And I have a handful of customers. Everything that I've launched since 2018, 2019, they've bought every single thing.
Wow. That's amazing. And that's another thing that I always like to kind of share with the audience here is in just my personal opinion, I feel like one of the keys, or the primary key to me to success, is relationships. And I know you mentioned it a few times throughout our conversation, are those people that have either presented opportunities for you, or in this case, people who have supported you along your way. What would you say have been some of those relationships that have helped you to get to where you are today that you truly value?
Like in terms of, like, what was the question in terms of the relationships?
Yes. So who are some people that you feel have helped you or aided you in getting to where you are today? You feel like either they presented opportunities, they've shown you support, that you would say have helped you to become successful?
Yeah. So obviously there's it's split between two sides. So you have the people you're actively learning from and the people who are actively supporting you. So in terms of the supporters, I've had people who still show up to this day on my content on Facebook specifically, because I've been over there since 2018, and they're still actively supporting me. And it's amazing, because some days when you feel, I don't consider myself like an influencer or anything like that. I'm still trying to figure so many things out, man. So many things. I have nothing figured out, dude. Nothing. I'm just a guy trying to build a business, trying to make some dough, and that's
Right.
it. But on days where you're like, I don't really want to come online and build a business. You see a comment from this one dude, and he's like, dude, you've changed my life. And like I've had people who've said like, you've changed my life, and it's pretty cool. So there's that side of things. The other side, man, there's one guy, Jacob Karras. I've been connected with him since 2019, and he's someone I work with in terms of, he's my coach. I would also call him a very good friend as well, because, dude, I've had some really down times. Back in 2020, I was on the brink of just letting everything go in terms of the business. Just didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Who gives a crap about the money if you're not very happy behind the scenes? Yeah, man, he just took an hour out of his day to get on a call with me, and someone who's done 3, 4, 5 million in sales online, that's very valuable, and he showed character, he showed sincerity, and that man, it's amazing. I think people should show more of that, and you'd be surprised. Like even on Twitter now, man, maybe you have the same as well, but Twitter DMs, I try my best to get back to everyone. And there's been a couple people, you talk to them in DMs, I help them out as much as I possibly can with the time and resources that I have at this current moment. And they're like, dude, thank you so much. I've not had this before. You are the only person who showed this sort of support to me. If you ever need anything, I'm going to be here for you, sort of thing, like supporting you. And that, man, is just, I don't know, it's a really cool thing about it.
Yeah. No, go ahead. You go ahead. Say that again.
Yeah, just goosebumps, when you think about it.
Right. Oh man, trust me. I know, man. Usually, at least in my experience, like I've had those moments where I'm questioning, like, should I be going on? Like, should I quit? Like, is anybody even listening or watching or paying attention? And then, like you mentioned, in my case, somebody will send an email and be like, oh man, like this touched me, or, it has such a great impact. I shared this with my friend. They were in a tough space. And it's like, man, people sometimes have no idea how timely those messages they send are. And, like I've definitely received some, and I was just going through, and it's just like that email just came in and be like, oh man, like I really needed to hear that. Like I really did. So yeah,
I
man,
love it. Yeah, for sure.
absolutely amazing. So you mentioned the importance of choosing one platform, and it seems like the platform that you chose and you're crushing it on, at least in my opinion, is Twitter. And with that in mind, like I see you taking the route of releasing multiple Twitter threads every day. Like, what's your process behind that? How are you able to put out high quality tweets and threads that people tend to engage with?
Okay, so in terms of like my process when it comes to Twitter, it's something where once I got started on Twitter, and I suggest this to everyone as well, watching or listening, like you need to make this commitment. And as soon as it starts popping off, like my Twitter has just recently started popping off, and now I can't let go. Like, because in the past I've had times in business where you make a lot of money, and man, you just sit back and you chill out, and dude, it takes months to get that stuff back, and sometimes you don't even get it back. Which is the wild thing about it. So that's number one, right? Once you get into the groove of things, whether that's growth or tweets or just being consistent, just do not let go. Just keep pushing regardless of how you feel, because I can guarantee that the moment you stop and the moment you want to get back into it, that's where people give up. That's just where people give up, because they're like, screw this, it's not working for me. Right. But in terms of the tweets and the threads, I've been online since 2016. And I've been actively posting content on Facebook since 2018.
Okay.
Pretty much every single day. Right. Wow. So that's the thing, right? I have the experience, I have the knowledge in copywriting, and I have a backlog of thousands of pieces of content on Facebook that I have all stored in my Notion system. So all of this is stored. And for me, it's a lot of work, because obviously I have to take content that I posted 2-3 years ago that I actually completely disagree with today, reiterate, refine, and then post it on Twitter. So that's how I'm able to just pump out so many threads, because I'm in a blessed position where I have so much content on Facebook and so much content that's been built up that I have it all over there. Because if I were to start, I probably wouldn't recommend a thread a day. Because even now, even though I have all of the content, sometimes the threads can kind of suck. Like I have no idea how this happened, but I posted a thread the other day. It popped up. We've got like $750,000 impressions. Did really my best performing thread so far. It was like half broken English, and I had reread it after I posted it, and I was like, Jesus Christ, dude, like you should delete this. I was like, let me just leave it. Let's just see how it performs.
Right.
It did well, but that's the thing. The one thread a day, if you're watching this and you have the capacity to do so, give it a go, and you have the time, because man, like in the month of June, end of April, I spent 2 full days. Just all I did. I created content for the whole entire month of June.
Wow.
Like, morning till evening, that's all I did. I had like 4 or 5 Red Bulls that day. My sleep was screwed after. So I don't do that anymore. I tried it. It's just way too heavy. So I just schedule my threads and my tweets 1 week after the other.
Okay.
So for the next 7 days, I'm gonna do it Sunday. Schedule it until next Sunday. You know, and every day, actually, a really good tip if someone wants to start making tweets every day and threads, is just get into the habit of writing every single day. Block out 30 minutes. If you have time, block out 2 hours a day. Just write. Sit down. There's so many resources. There's so many inspirational tweets that you can emulate, that you can get inspiration from. And just make it a habit to write, because you're going to notice that after 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, man, it gets so much easier. And once you're in the flow, that's when things are great. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but
no, man, that's good. That so many gems that you just shared there, and I really appreciate it, man. One of the other things that I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on, I feel like there are habits that really tend to dictate where we go in life. What would you say are some daily habits that you attribute to your success, both in life and business?
For me personally, it's been there's been a discipline side of things where when I've lacked discipline, everything just took a massive hit. So discipline should be a staple in everyone's, daily habits. Second thing for me, I don't really think about stuff too much. I don't really overthink. I don't really have crazy habits that I stick to. I used to do like meditation and journaling, and that can help. And sometimes I journal, like in rare occasions, I sit down. I'm like, I look at my business and I look at the state of it. I'm like, okay, where do I want to bring this? You write it down. It gets weight off my shoulders, but I don't really think about stuff too much. I just tend to do. And by doing, it brings me clarity in where I should bring my business and my life. Right. I don't know if that makes sense, because I feel like a lot of people, again, this is what we talked about, the sponge analogy earlier on. We are being blasted with information, right? Blasted.
Yes.
There's like meditation. There's like being all calm. Then there's David Goggins like screaming at you on the other side of the screen. There's like all sorts of stuff, right? And like people are just like they're just so overstimulated by information, they have no idea what to do. They're like they try hardcore working out for 2 weeks, and they're like, I don't feel good. Then they try meditating, but they're like, there's not enough action. Then they try something else, and it's like it causes so much confusion. So, man, I think building this resilient mindset of just no matter what it is, you just got to get it done. I still struggle, man. Sometimes I wake up. Sometimes I wake up and I have my phone in my hands, like the minute I wake up, and this is a habit that sucks. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes I go to bed a little bit later. But at the end of the day, as long as you're sticking to like 80% of your routine, like in terms of just being on time, showing up, doing the work, being consistent, and as long as you just get a little bit done every single day, right? That's the main thing.
Oh man, I love that. Yo, Josh, this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Learned so much from you. Before we go, there's a fun little segment I like to have with my guests. It's called Pick Three. So essentially what I'm going to ask you to do is to select a random number between 1 and 16. We'll do that 3 times, and I'll share with you a question based on the number that you select. So whenever you're ready, let me know what your first number is between 1 and 16.
12.
All right, 12. So the question is, what is a quote or a mantra that you live by or that you use for motivation?
Okay. If you don't start doing something different today, do you think you're let me bring the quote up. I don't remember it by heart, but I have it on my phone, man. It's a fantastic quote. Absolutely love it. Let me bring it up. So, tomorrow won't be different if you don't change something today.
I like
man. And the reason being is because I have some, my brother, and we have very deep conversations about this stuff, and a friend of mine as well.
Mhm.
And a lot of the time, like they want to do something, or even with clients, and they want to do a change in their life, in their habits, in their business. But like, I'll do it next week. I'll do it tomorrow. You don't get around to it. You never get around to it. Like if you're making the conscious decision right now to say, I want to do X, Y, Z, do it today. 'Cause if you don't do it today, what makes you think you're going to do it tomorrow? Because it ain't going to happen.
Right.
So I love that quote.
Oh man, great quote. Great quote. What's your second number between 1 and 16?
Number 7.
Number 7. The question is, if you could go back in time, what is one thing that you would change about your business or how you got started?
I would not overthink as much as I did. I'm a serial overthinker. I overthink a lot of stuff. That's something that I would change. It was such a horrible habit because overthinking is mental masturbation. It's literally you are you're creating problems that don't yet exist.
Right.
And oh man, like by overthinking, I literally manifested problems. I'm not really
Wow.
super big in like manifestation, but dude, like if you think about something every single day, just all you think about is literally going to manifest in front of you. And man, so many times that happened to me. So don't overthink for sure.
Okay.
Big one.
Okay. And your last question between 1 and 16, what would that number be?
15.
15. The question is, if you could operate your business or your office in any location in the world, where would it be and why?
That's a good question. Are you familiar with Andrew Tate?
No, I'm not.
Oh, dude, you should look him up. You should look him
Okay.
up, man. He's a very controversial person, but a lot of his views are absolutely amazing. So he lives in Romania, and I've never been to Romania. I've been into a few countries in Europe. I've never been in the US, right? So I can't really give my 2 cents about the US. But he gets into the topics of how Western culture is very it's not up to par as what we think it is, right? Just society, the economy.
Right.
I'll give you an example, like the UK and London, like the stabbings every single day in London. You can't go out at night in London. It's just absolutely crazy.
Wow.
I have my best friend lives in France. Absolute joke, because I love France. I love the country, but I would never move there simply because the amount of paperwork you need for stuff. You want to set up a business, you want to start selling on eBay, you got to fill out dozens of pieces of paperwork, and you got to pay 22% tax every 3 months, even if you only make $1. It's just crazy.
That is insane.
That's insane, man. Man, if I could choose, honestly, I probably right now, because I've never been to Romania, I've never been into these other countries, but one country I would love to go to is Portugal, simply because it's right next door from Spain. Which is where I'm currently living. So the weather's pretty good, but also because the tax rates they're pretty solid over there.
Okay.
So yeah, that's Portugal, but I'm sure that will change once I start.
Yo, that's good, man. Josh, man, I have truly enjoyed this. I appreciate you so much for your time today. And before we go, just wanted to pass the mic over to you. Are there any questions that you like to ask me personally, or any last or closing words you like to leave our audience with?
Dude, yeah, for sure, man. Like, where do you, like, a quick question when it comes to this podcast, like, where do you want to, what's the plan with the podcast, and where do you want to bring this?
Oh, man, that is a great question. So I had a podcast that I was doing 7 years prior to this. And the one thing that I missed out on was the opportunity to monetize. So like the one difference that I have with this podcast is wanting to tie it to some form of monetization. That's the one thing. But when I look at the overall goal of this show, it's always what it's always been, which is to develop relationships, having the opportunity to meet amazing people like you, hear about your journey, and then be able to share that with other people. Now, this time around, I get to share with people who are aspiring entrepreneurs. They want to start their business. They may not have the opportunity, to send you a DM or some of our other guest DMs and learn from you guys. So just being able to provide that information, connect with amazing people like yourself, and then share with other people along their journey, man. That's the main thing for me, is just building those relationships.
Yeah, and you're doing a good job, man. You're doing a good job. I'm not. I'm going to say this is by far the best podcast I've ever done. I was going to say
Oh
top three
wow.
because I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone I've done a podcast with.
You're so kind, man. Thank you.
No, man, but you're doing a good job, man. Like
Thank
just
you.
even for everyone watching this, just before we started recording and going live, just the whole entire process, man. You've made it seamless and absolutely amazing. Questions are amazing. Conversation was great, and man,
Thank you.
I'm here to support you.
I
So
appreciate that. And likewise, Josh, if there's anything that I
thank
can
you,
do, man, please don't hesitate. Let me know. Before we go, definitely let everybody know, how can they get in contact with you? How can they show you some love and support?
for sure. So my main place that I'm at is on Twitter. So my username is I'm Josh Cousins. That's the main place that I'm at the moment. But I'm also on Facebook, which is just Josh Cousins. I have a Facebook group and a personal profile, so you guys can reach out to me over there if you would like to.
Please, you guys, definitely show Josh some love and support. Follow him on Twitter. His threads are amazing, the content that he's putting out. And Josh, thank you again for coming on the show. Definitely appreciate it. You have an open invitation if you ever want to come back. So thank you
Thank
for
you,
everything
bro.
you share with us today. I appreciate you.
Thank you, man.